All right, episode 222. Today it's Sleepless in Real Estate. We're addressing the agent's midnight anxieties. We're going to get started right now.
That title sucks.
All right, episode 222. You have seen Sleepless in Seattle. I'm just gonna
start a podcast.
I'm just gonna lay. I'm just going silent
out on
this one.
yourself?
God, that was a yeah. I'm going silent. This is Sleepless in Real Estate. We're going to be addressing real estate agents' midnight anxieties.
That part's good.
That is a good part. The first part, we're just going with it. We are just going to go with this.
It's a good premise.
Yeah. You know,
Have you guys seen the new Roadhouse yet?
I have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was all right.
It was.
I got sucked into a TikTok vortex about 2 weeks ago, so the
Yeah.
only thing I know from it is Conor McGregor rocks really fucking weird.
He
That's
did, honestly,
so weird.
That's the weirdest part of the movie.
Yeah.
The movie's fun because it's kind of a parody of the original, which is kind of makes it fun. His character's so over the top that it's like making fun of a parody, which becomes way too much.
But doesn't he? He kind of walks like that in general, doesn't he?
Oh yeah, he's a walking cartoon character in
Yeah.
the first place. So I don't even think he knew he was in a movie.
Yeah. Which, you know, if you're up at midnight because you have anxiety, you're probably just watching and
Watching
scrolling
old
through
Roadhouse.
Right.
Netflix. And I did ask, you know, I was like, did Patrick Swayze make a comeback for this one?
No, but speaking of Swayze,
Wait, that's it? That's all you got?
one time I
because
watched.
you could do AI, I guess.
Yeah.
One time I was in New York and I watched Ghost in somebody else's room across the street from my hotel room because they had it on a big TV. So I just watched the clay scene of Ghost, just straight voyeur
That's
style.
so funny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever
All
seen
right.
Ghost? It's a weird movie.
It is
Yeah, it's weird.
It's a pretty
Yeah,
weird
it's
movie.
really weird. Yeah, I won't watch that one again. All right. Before we get started, we got to thank our sponsors. Maybe they don't want to be thanked on this episode because, look, we all have. I will tell you that my anxiety has kicked through the roof the last couple of years, and I've never had it until really the last two and a half, 3 years. And the more that we talk about it, the more people they're struggling.
Yeah.
And it always kicks on about 11 o'clock, sometimes 10 to 11. And that shit doesn't turn off.
It's because the world's so quiet, man.
Yeah.
There's nothing else to distract you. There's no kids. There's no spouse. There's no like by 11 o'clock, you're just sitting there scrolling mindlessly inside your own head, being like, what is going to happen to me for the rest of my days?
Wow, that's great.
I know.
Yeah.
I go to bed a little earlier, but I still deal with it.
Yeah. It's we all fight this. And you know what we don't fight with? I gotta wait for Jesse to get back to the
He's almost ready.
yeah.
He's adjusting things.
Yeah. Made me slow this one down. You know what we don't fight with is Mortgage Mike.
No, we don't.
No, because he's just slinging that money left and right.
He's a great dude. I had lunch with him just a few hours
That's what
ago.
I heard.
Wow.
You know, and he was just in Midland, you know, helping out a team out there, the Justin Willman team. So, and he's the pop shot,
What?
not pot. You can't do that in West Texas. Pop shot champion.
Is he now?
Yeah.
I was getting ready to say the man to my right has an obscene obsession, and this I don't think this exists anymore, but there used to be a video of us, and I thought I was doing okay. Maybe my greatest Papa Shot experience ever, and Brian almost tripled.
Is it
me
called
up.
Papa Shot?
Pop shot?
Yeah,
Pop shot?
Pop shot. Yeah.
I might be Googling
Weird
the wrong
muscle
shit.
memory thing.
Yeah.
I've always been good at it. I don't know why. I don't
So,
practice.
Here's what I'll say. If you want to do a loan and get a loan from a champion, that is Mortgage Mike, the pop shot champion of West
The world.
Texas.
Yeah.
Well, West Texas or the world. You just go to mmgloans.com and just tell him that you want to speak to the champ, and he will answer that phone. mmgloans.com. Then Armadillo, Theron Smith. I don't know what he's the champion of, but other than that, he's just protecting your house. He's giving you that buses and hard shell protection on your
Fanny
home.
packs and guitars.
Yes. Yep. Theron Smith over at Armadillo. Just go to armadillo.1/tour, TORE. And then Dana Wynn. We just wrapped up our Homeward at DFW meeting with Dana. She got back from a wedding not hers.
Not hers.
No.
She was involved. But
Yes.
Not hers.
Yeah. She said that she wants to start homeward wedding rentals.
Yeah.
That's what I heard.
Yeah. But
She
for
had
now,
such a good time.
yeah, she had such a great time just paying for her wedding.
It was
But
beautiful.
she does need your properties to manage now. So just go to homewarddfw.com, get with Dana, and she'll take great care of you. And then look, Tor Studios, torstudios.com.
TOREstudios.com.
Yeah. That's one thing that we talked about last week. If you go to episode 221, we broke down the commission lawsuit some more, I think. And I think we did that in 220.
Yeah.
And now we're done.
We did say, Brian, you weren't here. We did say we weren't really going to talk about this anymore.
No.
And yet here we are.
And we're not talking about it.
We're talking about not talking about it. This is calling someone to tell them not to call you anymore.
Exactly.
Yes.
That's what we're doing right now.
But because of what we're not supposed to be talking about right now, that we are in the last couple of weeks, we are now seeing the amount of anxiety and fear that agents are having and just whatever change is coming. Yeah. And it's scaring a lot of people in their business. You know, some of them, you know, Matt and I had lunch earlier since you and Mortgage Mike didn't invite us to it.
I was invited. I didn't do the inviting.
That's fine. I
answered the call.
I say the same thing. But Kelderman and I had our own lunch. We had our own powwow meeting. Said, you know what, screw Mortgage Mike. Just he's a champ and he won't invite us anymore. But you know, even Kelderman was like, kind of, he'll admit. Yeah. He said, I don't know what to do. I'm kind of in this weird limbo. Like, I don't know which direction to take this in.
Yeah.
And you know, as July, you know, the Good Home team has already lost at least one listing, if not another, because of this commission debacle. Mm-hmm. Right. And it wasn't because we weren't willing to work with this client. They just didn't like how we were, you know, kind of educating them on it. And we're seeing a lot of misinformation out there. So the anxiety that's coming about is this change that could happen or will happen in July. How is it going to impact your revenue? How's it going to impact your income? This is the job. You're doing this to make a living.
I think the first thing to just really put out there is like, there's going to be changes.
Yeah.
Right. Like hiding behind it. Like I will say there are a lot of people, if you look in some of these large Facebook groups and stuff, we really, as an industry, we kind of get off on the idea of just like tough manning, like being really tough online about it. Like, this is going to affect my business at all. Yeah. I'm a badass. You're like, no, it will. Trust me, it will.
Buy side commissions are going down.
Yeah, like however this shakes out, this will be a destabilizing event for a little while, and there will eventually be a new normal. But in the meantime, things will change, and we'll need to adapt. And that's been the case with really every major industry in the world at some point in time, and this is ours. And so, if you're just not doing anything but being afraid or having that anxiety, it is time to start thinking about how you're going to adapt and what that looks like. Now, does being afraid like the world is falling apart do you any favors? Absolutely not. What I will also say, I'm very confident that there are a lot of people that will take a massive advantage of a new environment.
Yes.
There are always disruptors. There are always innovators. And this sort of destabilizing force in our industry before we find our new normal is an opportunity for people that were once working in this particular framework that was sort of cookie cutter framework to now find a new way to go and attract business and to serve clients. There is going to be an opportunity for people to adapt and get ahead of the curve. And so getting frozen in time and not doing anything about it because you just think that it's not going to be that big of a deal is definitely no way to approach this. Also, don't let this be the thing that keeps you up at night. It's time to get to work and to start to adapt and to figure out what your new business model is going to look like, or your new value proposition, or whatever it is. You got to figure out how you're going to face the future.
And that sounds great, right? Until your anxiety kicks in, right? And this is something we shared in our weekly sales meeting. Fear makes the wolf bigger than he is.
Yeah.
Right. Just as German proverb. So, don't know what proverb from a German one it was, but
something about wolves.
But it's true, right? How often have we built something up? We are afraid of it, or we're scared, and we've built this monster bigger than it actually is. And it happens. And in this case, when we're talking about, you know, we jumped into 100% commission career, and, you know, there's no benefits, right? We did it to be our own boss. Unlimited income earning potential, right? We said time freedom. That's actually the joke.
Yeah, that doesn't exist if you're doing anything. You know when I have time freedom? When I have no one to work with.
Yeah, when you're unemployed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
And not earning any
Which
income.
Is every morning I wake up, right?
Yeah. And so now we've built this and we're like, all right, think of it this way. If you were, let's say you were just 1 or 2 years in the business, or you just got your license and you put a notice in at work because you saved up some money. You heard, you know, you've been researching this, you saved up 6 months of reserves because that's what everybody says to do. And you left your career to get into this industry. All of a sudden this change comes about and you're like, all right, what am I going to do? And you start, it doesn't matter how long you've been in this industry. This is something that's no one can predict. And so everyone is just speaking out of fear, out of being scared. Mm-hmm. And just like Brian said, and just like what you see in some of the people on all these big Facebook groups, by the way, join the only real estate group worth being a part of. We're not talking about that in there.
No. Unless it's us sharing these episodes.
Exactly. But
which is every week.
You know, just like you need to provide more value. You need to show more value. That's great. That's, again, when you say all that, what does that mean?
Well, and here's the thing is that's going to vary person to person. There is a cap on your ability to provide value. I don't want to ignore the elephant in the room because that would be disingenuous to the consumer who has a legitimate gripe in this scenario. And it's really the only way for agents to wrap their head around this. If you provide more value and can prove it, you're going to be able to charge more. Just like my divorce attorney was able to charge more because he was able to show me I win in these scenarios. He convinced me of that. He showed me a track record of that. And then he said, oh, by the way, I need 10 grand to start. And I said, that's terrifying. Mm-hmm. And then I sent it. Now, real estate agents are not attorneys, and I'm not going to die on that sword. But agents are going to have to be able to show a package of value to clients before they meet them. And that is going to be hard for people who don't have the numbers and don't have the experience. That's going to be difficult.
Can we do a little sidebar for a second? You said
for
attorneys.
Sure.
So that's what they say, at least in suits.
Sidebar.
I was talking, Brian and I played in a charity golf tournament on Monday.
Fancy.
Go to DFW Angels. If you're in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, go check it. That's an amazing charity. Just go take a look at that and support that organization. But I was riding around because my spot was taken away. Not bitter about that one.
Now you know how I feel every time I go golfing with you guys.
Yeah. I'm not a bad golfer, but
I mean, we did get third. Maybe we would have got second
or fourth. Yeah. But I was talking with an attorney who's been in the industry a while, and I was like, I'm trying to offer solutions here. And it's like, you know, the problem in our industry, first and foremost, we've always said that it's a low barrier to entry.
Yes.
Right. And I was like, what if
it's low on the job accountability?
Yes. Right. You get a Groupon, you know, and now you're in it and you can go sell, and help people purchase their most valuable asset. But why is the attorney industry not created a way for maybe agents that become brokers or to become specialized to work like maybe nurse practitioners or physician assistants that can then go and give legal advice and in consultations like an attorney would just on this one specific thing. You have to get certified, right? And, a nurse practitioner can operate under a doctor's license. They can give medical advice. They can write prescriptions. Yep. And so why has that not evolved?
Well, can I ask, maybe it's be my ignorance around how this works, so forgive me if this is totally off base. Those aren't commission-based industries. There's still a salary and an hourly pay. You're going to find really hard to find somebody to sign up for a mentorship for free, right? Part of the promise of this job is you're loose. Go make money, right? Like, whereas sure, I'm sure you could develop some mentorship program if you also want to pay people to be in that mentorship program. Because I don't know I know I wouldn't have signed up for some 6 months mentorship, right? in real estate before I was allowed to make real money, right?
Well, I think
so. How do you overcome that?
Well, I think it becomes on the job, right? So a nurse practitioner, you have to have a certain level of experience as a nurse before you can even go to get your, that's a graduate degree.
Yeah, it's like the higher level.
Yes,
being a nurse practitioner.
Yep. Yeah, physician assistant. It's a master's program, and so there should be some type of option for that, because the number one thing that you see everyone yelling or screaming, the very loud, maybe we'll call it minority, of what the perception of how real estate agents are, is that we're glorified paper pushers, right? We're just a taxi cab that opens doors. We don't do anything. And then what is everyone saying? They can go and hire an attorney to just explain the contract and go over that. Well, for the most part, I probably know that contract just as well, if not better than an attorney.
Know how to use it better than an
attorney. Especially in our, that's what I was going to say. In our state, it's promulgated by attorneys. Like I said something the other day about agents have got to stop acting like the contract doesn't matter, because what the contract does matter on is you don't have to write anything in there. Actually, they tell us we shouldn't write a whole lot of language in there. But where it is very powerful is you have at least a dozen spots where you can affect the time frame, your client's ability to make money, their ability to terminate if something comes up, which in turn can then cost clients thousands of dollars. We're sitting at a table where Brian and I have had conversations about, like, that person's not getting their earnest money back. They defaulted on the contract. We're going to go deal with that in court now, right? Like, that's where the contract is really super powerful. It's not that I need to be able to rewrite it from the standpoint of like a legal standpoint. That's not where my value is in that contract. In Texas, at least.
Yeah, it's just a thought that I had where it's like, how can we evolve into something better and more specialized?
I just think it breaks at the pay part. This whole industry doesn't have salary built into it. You would have to rewrite real estate in the way it's built from the brokerage all the way down from a profit standpoint to start including the type of salaries that it would take for people to do that.
No,
who's going to do that for free?
But attorneys get paid. They're not necessarily salary. They have to go earn, their and billable hours, right? Yeah. So now you start to work it from a billable hour standpoint and say, like, again, negotiations is this, and this. And so, I do think how we evolve is like Mortgage Mike, came in on here and says agents practice listing presentations all the time. And now they're just going to have to do the same thing with the buyer. So know your scripts, objections, and value.
That's the biggest part is for agents.
And what this evolves in, and from an anxiety standpoint, that keeps agents up. For the most part, they don't have their lead generation pipeline down.
Right.
We just left Homewards meeting as a residential property management company, and saying, like, we're putting and improving the systems and flow to make sure that we have a future pipeline of business that becomes predictable. I can ask any agent right now what their next 90 days of closings look like, and they're not sure.
No.
Right? They're hoping that maybe one of their friends, families, past clients just reaches out to them and is like, hey, you should meet Jeff. Jeff is not going to negotiate your commissions. He just wants to work with you because I told him to. That's what they're hoping for.
Yep.
And so, from an anxiety standpoint, they don't know where their next check is coming from. And now they're scared. They're like, holy crap. Now, if I don't know where my next check is coming from, and now they're going to even take more of it away. Right? So for the most part, what is everyone worried about? It's going to be about the future viability of business.
Yep.
And earning a somewhat livable wage or income, even though everyone else online.
Which shockingly, agents aren't really doing already. I know that's the sentiment is every deal is worth $30,000 and everybody's Scrooge McDucking it into their gold coin bath. But like most agents are not making that. Like I don't know what the number is, just you have to pull it up, but I guarantee the average real estate agent makes less than 50 grand a year. Guaranteed.
It's like 46,000.
Yeah, for sure.
That's most of them. And so to parlay a couple of these comments here, I think that this is a really good direction to take this conversation.
Well, don't bring up Heather's.
I won't, even though it's very flattering. Mortgage Mike chimed in and we talked a little bit about, or he's talking about agents practicing their value proposition on the buy side the same way they do on the list side.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a comment in here about how in Australia, less than 4% of buyers use agents. Now, the one thing that I will say to that is if that's the way that industry's always been. And so now that we're making a shift, I believe here in America, it's going to be very rare that you'll have an industry that transacts an asset of this magnitude and only one side has legal representation. I think that where there's money to be made, money will be made. I think that the way that buyer agent compensation works will adapt in the future, meaning like right now, there's no way to really finance it, or there's very few ways to work it in the deal.
We're talking about that.
Yeah, we're looking at this in a vacuum of the way things are. I don't think that in our capitalist society, there are very few opportunities that someone doesn't take advantage of to make money. And so I believe that buyer representation will be something that would still be affordable for the buyer in the future. But I have no idea what that looks like, but I believe that we will find a way.
And think of this. I just looked this up because I'd read this somewhere, and as accounting. So home sales affect the economy and the job market, right? So accounting for nearly 17% of the GDP, real estate is clearly a major driver of the U.S. economy. So when you start disrupting this starts to have a trickle down, and effect and could impact others, right? This is, it's not just real estate agents that it's impacting. Like it's other employment sectors that support the real estate industry in itself. And so you're trying to unwind and unravel certain things. And we compare to other countries, but we also like to say that we're the best country out there. And you can jump in a second. It really bothers me when we're like, we're the best. The United States is the absolute hands down the best country out there. But then we start
in world
wars.
And
then we start comparing it to, well, the UK does this, Australia does this, China does this. I'm like, but if we're saying we're the best, then let's just stay the best.
Yeah. Well, and we're doing the typical thing where we only want to cherry pick the parts of someone's situation that are you want, okay, you can have like Holland's interest rates. You can also have their gas prices and their import issues and whatever other else that goes on that makes things more expensive that ultimately balance out how much everybody makes, right? Like you just don't get to cherry pick out the one part and be like, I want Europe's interest rates. Okay, you get all the other stuff that they have to pay more for there than we pay for here too. So I don't even hear that argument. That's nonsense.
I mean, just to respond to that, best for the client. I do believe that it's always better for the client to be represented by a fiduciary. If one side of a transaction has a professional fiduciary representing them, then I believe it's best for the other side to have one as well. I do believe we will find an innovative way to compensate buyers agents, because I believe that's an opportunity for someone going forward to figure that out. And where there's money to be made here in America, we seem to figure out how to make it. I do want to jump back to mortgage. Mike's point, though, is our whole buyer's value proposition for a long time has been, oh, don't worry about it. It's free to you.
Yeah.
That's no longer a value proposition.
That's why the lawsuit happened, by the way. That conversation was one of the major issues.
Yes, exactly. And so now as a buyer's agent, you are charged with providing or for showcasing real value. People will still hire buyer's agents. I do believe that. I also believe there'll be much more, they'll scrutinize much more that process of hiring a buyer's agent. They'll be much pickier with who they work with, just like an attorney and things like that. And so in that vein, if you have a whole career's worth of buyer transactions, your job right now, if you want to take actionable steps, should be cataloging your value proposition. If I go and I am hiring, I'm not saying we're surgeons, but if I do have surgery, I want to know how that guy's done in other surgeries. I want to know that when he puts people's bicep back together, he does generally a good job. He has a track record. And he can showcase that. Yes. And he has a reputation. The same way that I do a listing presentation. In a listing presentation, I don't just talk about what I'm going to do for you. I also talk about what I've done for the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people in the past. My average days on market, sales price, things like that. I have anecdotal evidence of the reason you should work with me. You're going to need to start cataloging that on the buy side as well. You need a real buyer's presentation to showcase how you're going to save them money or how you're going to protect their interests, situations you're going to help them work through, the pitfalls of not working with you, the advantages of working with you, and the ways that you have helped people in the past. And if you don't have that, if you're a new agent or you don't have a big track record or something like that, most attorneys work for law firms. Most attorneys are not individuals. The industry is going to transform that way. The individual agent will go away. For the most part.
It's weird because we've been talking about that aspect of it without any knowledge of this lawsuit coming down.
Just because we saw a single stockbroker that's just like Jeff the stockbroker.
Yeah.
No, they work for a brokerage house.
Yep.
Do you know, I will challenge you on the attorney side. We all know a lot of attorneys. Do you know any attorney that doesn't work for or have a practice with multiple attorneys? Very few.
Jim Adler. The Texas Hammer.
Jim Adler has like 50 attorneys that work for him.
Probably,
you know how many fucking attorneys
Jim Adler doesn't
Jim
work for
Adler?
anybody.
Yeah. I guarantee you can have Jim Adler practice or
Guaranteed.
whatever.
Oh, he's
got
in multiple cities.
Tons of attorneys that
if you're
work
in Texas, that you love.
It's called Jim Adler and Associates.
Exactly.
Well, now his son.
When I was a kid, Jim Adler was just him. And probably
if
not
you
even
do practice areas was one of the things there. Who we are, attorneys. Jim Adler has a boatload of attorneys that work for him. There are at least 50 people on this page alone. Attorney.
Yeah, we're only in the C's.
Yes, he's got a bunch.
So you're going to start, this is where the real estate teams start to become more valuable. And Kelderman and I talked about this at lunch is that, the teams are going to be able to provide more resources.
I actually don't agree with that at all. I hire an attorney every time I need
it. Bring up what
I don't avoid hiring attorneys at all.
No, Jared, that's we don't want to hire.
I don't want to get in those situations, but I am the first one to hire an attorney.
Yeah, I don't think they avoid them hiring them like a plague. And it's becomes the necessary evil. And for the most part, you hire an attorney to make sure that it's looking out for your best interest, right?
And to Brian's point, I'm definitely hiring an attorney if the other person has one. I'm certainly not going to go against an attorney.
I'm not going to talk to your attorney. I'm going to get my attorney. There's no way.
And
I know I'm not the smartest person
in the room.
And
if you actually were to break this down, a lot of times when you sue somebody or you go into a lawsuit, what is the other person trying to get?
Money.
No, but they're also working their attorney fees in there. Right.
Which these attorneys did, by the way.
They're working their attorney fees in there. Like, oh, Matt, if I sue you and you lose, you're paying my attorney fees as well.
Well, and this is exactly. And that's one of the
court
things.
costs, attorney fees.
How do we do that in real estate? No, like one of the things that I think is really difficult too, though, is in this. I think the public favors a flat fee model, right? Like that's what everybody. And this goes back to Brian talking about action you can do. I actually do think as an agent, you not only do you have to have a clear understanding of your value, you are going to have to, and hopefully, I don't know if this stuff's illegal now. I'm so confused on what you say or not. There is a tiered, if I go to an attorney's office and I want the best guy there, I'll do this. I'll actually say this differently. If I want to go get a tattoo, right? And I want the best artist in the place, they're going to cost me more per hour as opposed to the apprentice tattoo person who may be just as good, but doesn't have the hours on task yet. And if you happen to find that person, fantastic. Or if you find the person who makes the ladybug on your shoulder turn into a black blob because you went with the cheapest person because they were offering $50 tattoos that day. And you said, I'll get a $50 tattoo. It's the same scenario, right? Like there's going to be a lot of value that people aren't going to realize until later. Right. And so there's going to be opportunity for agents to pick up the cover up tattoos. There's going to be an opportunity for agents to pick up buyers. But what agents aren't realizing is that opportunity diminished up front. Yeah. Because this requirement to sign a buyer agency agreement to see a house is going to take some buyers out of the game with shitty tattoo artists. Yeah. Because they signed a rep that they can't get out of. And you've got to make every opportunity, to talk about your value. That all has to be maximized.
You know what I haven't thought of yet? In that same vein is like one, I think that so if you're talking about the apprentice, maybe the apprentice tattoo artist becomes the real estate agent that people hire at a lower price point, maybe. And then what
they're backed up by somebody else,
or potentially, yeah.
You get me for this, but you also get Jeff's mind.
Potentially, right? I think that your luxury price points are going to become some of the most vicious negotiations on earth now.
Absolutely,
well, they're both paying their agents out of pocket, and they're just going to be like treat him like attorneys now. They're like, bury this guy.
Yeah.
And you're going to see what I also think may happen is you're going to see a lot of fluid negotiations where who pays commission gets decided during the negotiation process based on repair amendments and non-realty items. You want the couch? Now you're paying for
the commission's going to be the first place where people come to retrieve money, the absolute first place.
Yeah. You want my surround sound? Now you're compensating my agent, right? Like that's going to start getting thrown in.
I'm telling you, when it comes down to repair amendments, we're going to start seeing agents. And look, agents already do this. They're throwing in $500 here to make it work or whatever. But you're going to start. This is where the weak agent doesn't help the consumer, right? Like this is where weak agents take listings where a buyer incentive should be offered. And they say, you know what, I'll just take it no matter what. We'll get a sign in the yard. And then the seller sits there for 6 months. And in a market that's not in your advantage, you lose time, you lose money. Like weak agents are going to flourish for a little bit just because people who just hate on real estate agents are going to be like, see, look, he took less money. And it's going to take them a few months to figure out they got screwed by a dum-dum.
Well, they're not going to be able to do as many transactions to keep that up.
Of course.
Right.
And hopefully, overall agent numbers are going to drop. Like that has to happen, right?
1.6 will probably get to 900 to a million.
That's what I thought. I said $1 million the other day.
And I will say that, again, if we really look at this in general, the anxiety portion of this, right? What is causing sleepless nights? And it's usually a concern about, as you're a business owner, your future income or lack thereof that's coming in. Yeah. And with this change that's happening, if you lead generate through it, there's ways to adapt and evolve. Just like one of our shows, I think it was 219, right, Jesse? It was called Adapt or Die, or Diversify or Die.
Diversify or Die.
And if you continue to figure out where, money changes hands when problems are solved, there's a lot of problems right now.
Yep.
So the first and foremost, I would become a strong listing agent.
Yes.
Yeah. I would also start becoming more specialized in maybe distressed situations, bankruptcy, divorce, probate, short sales, right? There's still going to be a lot of those opportunities. And if you go down that path, your money will be earned there. And if you have the product, like, look, let's be real. If you were a drug dealer and you had the best drugs, people are flocking to you. Right. So if you have the best houses, people are going to come to you. So let's look at this and present the best product out there.
I think there's niche markets on both ends. I think the chunky middle is where agents are going to struggle to show value, because this is where the consumer is absolutely right. I absolutely know agents who don't do anything different for the extra $600,000 at the home costs, right? And that's not some exposure of the market. Like, agents aren't just doing something different between 400 and 800. And that's where the general consumer is right. You should not be able to just say, I make more money because this house costs more. That's ridiculous. I think there's huge opportunity to provide volume, quality service on the first time buyer price points, right? If you can do that at a reduced rate at volume, there's huge opportunity there. And then the luxury market is going to be what it's always been, right? There's a certain price point in every market where who you know matters way, way more. Like, your Rolodex matters way more than your ability to get a home on the market. Those price points are everything else in the middle, though, is going to be being fought for a bunch of agents. And there's going to be a ton of financial competition between flat fee, varied percentages, maybe even hourly rates. Although I think that's the most expensive way to do this. But there's going to be a lot of competition.
I will definitely charge an hour.
I will take an hourly rate with a retainer all day.
Yeah.
Give
me that.
Yes.
Because it's guaranteed pay.
It's guaranteed pay.
And that's what's going to change, right? So it's like, you ask for the change, it's guaranteed pay. You retain me, and I charge you per
Don't think
door.
Most people are going to, the average homeowner is not going to like that.
Mileage, gas.
The average homeowner is not going to like that.
You think they're going to pay that?
I mean,
here's the thing.
I think you're going to see a wide range of options out there.
I think it's a large cycle in between the burned hand and the lesson. Yes. I think there is a insanely large cycle between when that happens. And real estate agents' numbers will decrease. We will become more professional. The value will become better in all of that. And just like the pendulum swung to buyer's agency in the first place, it will swing back to somewhere in the medium, in the interim anyways.
Look, it's the tattoo artist analogy that Matt just used, is that you could hire me to give you a tattoo. I would highly recommend not hiring me. And I will do it because for very cheap, maybe free, to get my portfolio going. And I will tell you that my Xbox user tag name was spelled wrong, because I thought I was spelling Satan Good Dog, and I spelled it as Satin. So good. I will tell you right now, I don't know if you want to hire me to do your tattoo and be creative on that.
No regrets.
Yeah, no regrets. So, there will be the low end agent, unfortunately, that will do it for next to nothing. And they're just trying to get the experience. They're just trying to make something. And, it's kind of like the investor out there. I was talking to investors, like, you know, if it cash flows 50 to 100 bucks, then, you know, it's still an okay deal. I'm like, well, what happens when property taxes go up next year? What happens when insurance goes up next year?
Because I just got hit with 2 escrow shortages and now I'm negative. That's not fun.
My $100 a month didn't cover that shit.
That's a real life thing that I'm living right now.
So you bought something that you know, or an agent's selling an supposed good deal investment property that's going to cash flow 50 to 100 bucks a month, and they didn't tell you, like, you know, that property taxes are going to go up next year because, you know, you're buying something that is at a lower value and you do the fix up, and now guess what? Valuations go up.
Yeah.
And now you're $300 in the hole every month, $3,600 a year plus any repairs.
Plus repairs, man.
So like,
and it only takes one of those repairs.
Yeah.
Bro.
Just crush you.
The way that I see it is like from the anxiety that I see is the July through December mess, maybe the 12 months mess of, you know, we're kind of ping-ponging back and forth off of the sidewalls here until we get back into, you know, a stabilized course.
It's been a kick in the nuts since March of 2020. Like, here's the reality, right? We go through COVID, which also exacerbates this whole lawsuit thing, because it's really the COVID increase that makes everybody feel like they're getting screwed. Everybody was kind of okay with this setup, and we were just doing 4 to 5% a year.
Yes.
Right. So like, then the lawsuit comes on the back of this, but you have COVID, which is so difficult just to navigate, to be for your buyers and your sellers. It's impossible to find sellers. It's impossible to get your buyers under. Then interest rates 2 years later go through the roof. Nobody wants to buy. You start finding some kind of balance in that market. And then this comes along. And look, I'm all for it. I'm here to like fight it out with the good real estate agents. But this is like, I also understand why agents are like, geez, and like, the spring of 24 was supposed to be the time that we started getting just a little bit of normalcy back into a market, moving into an election year, to hopefully see some nice 5.5 interest rates in 2025 and everybody just being great. Yep. And now this thing comes along and just starts tripping everybody in the middle of a field for no reason.
Well, exactly what I talked about with Tobacco today. I was like, we just got through the tail end of a whole different hellscape, and now we're just looking for a reprieve.
Which is why we've seen anxiety levels. And if we do touch a little bit on like kind of mental strength and just mental awareness, I mean, that's why we're seeing anxiety. We're seeing depression. We're seeing a lot of this because it's just been you've just been battling, like, you don't know the norms. Right. You're like, I just want to get back to something normal. Yeah. And now do we even know what that normal is?
We don't know what that normal is. And I think, but that's a good point. I think that dovetails nicely. When we talk about the mental aspect and the anxiety.
We are professional podcasters.
We are very professional podcasters. What was normal in the first place? Was normal doing business planning clinic in October and setting these insane goals because you felt the pressure to, because the person next to you was doing the same thing and knowing that you were never going to hit them? Was normal continuously falling short of some achievement that you were trying to get, you know, in your business because you really didn't want to put in the certain amount of hours to get there anyway? Because at the end of the day, maybe your life is so much better when you just live an easy lifestyle with the people you love, and you go home every day and you don't feel the pressure to always do more, want more, have more, be more, because I promise you still have that opportunity. I was one of my favorite quotes that I have not heard in forever, but I heard it the other day, is from Joseph Heller, who's an author. He wrote Catch-22 and some other books. And he was at a party in New York that was thrown by a hedge fund manager, and another author, Kurt Vonnegut, was talking about how their host of their party, the hedge fund manager, made more in a day than Joseph Heller made off of his most popular book run in its entire history. And he said, that is true, but I have something he will never have: enough. Yeah. And we are, a massive part of our anxiety around this business right now is because we're sitting there at night going, how am I going to still hit these massive goals that I have? How am I going to sell 150 houses a year? That's what I put down on my thing. I know I only sold 4 last year, but I put down 150 because that's what they told me I could achieve in this class. A lot of people are going to get out of the business. And I don't say that in a negative way. That's just life, guys. It's just life. But we put so much pressure on ourselves to do more, be more, have more, earn more, all this type of stuff. If you're feeling the anxiety, it's totally understandable. I struggle with it in a way that you would not even imagine, that you probably never realized just from watching this podcast. But I will also tell you None of it matters if you're unhappy with the way you're living your life. Stop worrying so much about the industry and what's going to happen or not happen. If you put in the work and if you're creative and you bust your ass every single day, good things are going to happen to you. But I will promise you, it's still not going to matter to you if you make $1 million a year and the rest of your life is shitty. So while you're sitting there with all this anxiety around where the business is going, I would ask yourself, what are you doing for yourself every day? What are you doing for your mindfulness every single day? Are you taking 15 minutes to meditate? Are you telling somebody you love them? Right? Like, we worry about so much shit when it comes to this business, but that's because we're not worrying enough about the things that really matter in life. I promise you, this is still going to be a viable industry to make money. You might not for the next couple of years make the type of money that you made in 2021, but you can still make money. I promise you, you can. But only if you come from a place of joy and satisfaction with what you already have. The more that we put pressure on ourselves to be something or achieve something that's probably not even meaningful to us, we're just working in the wrong direction. This is supposed to be fun at the end of the day. It really is.
Trying to figure out where to go with that one. No, that was good. And not...
Well, I've got somewhere, because I think one of the things that Brian touched on, and I love more than anybody hearing Brian say those words, but like I think one of the really good things for current licensed real estate agents, I think what this is going to do is it's actually going to decrease the amount of people just trying to get in the first place. If you are a good real estate agent who has a good solid business right now, and you are following up with people and you are providing value, and you can do a lot of those things we've been talking about, I think you're going to continue to thrive. You're going to have that little bit of figure it out time. What we're really going to see is we're going to see the normal amount of agents get out who couldn't figure this out, and maybe even a little bit more. And we're going to see less agents excited to get in. Right. The excitement to get in has been obscene. And look, we kind of have ourselves to blame for this self-fulfilling prophecy with the red bottom shoes and the helicopters and flashing Frederick's fucking commission up on the screen. Yeah. And all of us real estate agents know Frederick didn't just make a dime. All he did was execute a contract.
Can you imagine if like every true crime court fucking TV, and whenever they lock the guy up for murder,
they were like, done.
How much money the lawyer made?
Well, but here's the thing: is like, but we also exacerbated our situation with the clients, because what they saw was they saw Frederick show a house, and then they saw Frederick argue with somebody, and then execute a contract, and then they flashed up how much money he was going to make.
And then he did the high kick.
Yeah, they didn't flat. Now again, we'll use his just because he's visible. They didn't show his P&L. They didn't show his expenses. They didn't show what it costs to list that property. They didn't show the ones that fall out. And again, at the level of money he's making, I'm not saying that people should have sympathy, but understand that happens to your sister who's a licensed real estate agent. That happens to your mother who's a licensed real estate agent. That happens to your uncle who's a licensed real estate agent. I'm not even going to get into the conspiracy theory that I think a lot of reasons people are shitting on this is because it's a female-led industry. There's actually a little bit of sexism, which I am fully buying into, but I won't go there completely right now. But like my whole point is like,
223.
Like nobody wants to talk about the fact that like there are all kinds of business expenses. If you are an hourly employee, you don't understand, and that's not a knock on being an hourly employee. Most people are, but you don't understand the inherent risk and expense that goes along with a business. And real estate agents and real estate agent shows have done a very poor job of showing that. So if you are an agent who's doing the things that are right, I think you have a really great chance of weathering the storm if you can pivot.
Well, that's
do something with that, Nick.
I mean, there's a lot to do with what both you and Brian said. And, you know, Brian just opened up and was very vulnerable and shared. I mean, if you really dig deep into that, I mean, he's sharing what he's struggling with.
Yeah.
We've shared multiple times what we've all struggled with. Matt, you've been an open book on your entire journey.
Yeah.
And that is in a normal market. And what is normal, right? I would say what normal is what we see now is we see people that go from 0 to a 100 of flying off the handle really fast.
Yeah.
We see now that we're afraid of cancel culture, and you say you put your foot in your mouth one time too many, or just once, and now the
mob will eat you up and move on too.
Yes,
they're like locusts, bro.
Yeah,
they're like one of the plagues. They will eat all the corn and wheat and then just move on looking for another field. They won't care that you are in shambles.
Yes,
bro.
And now you're boycotted, and now you never earn a living. But now you get out of COVID, you survive that, right? And you didn't know whether you could show houses, whether you could, take people in your car, gatherings, whatever that may be. You know, before all that, what were we worrying about? We were kind of worrying about a recession. I saw Jared post that doesn't the real estate industry always say that half the agents are getting out of the business? And, they probably did. We've probably seen a lot of churn with new agents coming in. And so what we're now seeing is as potentially a massive disruption to the way the industry earns revenue. And I will tell you that I'm in the multifamily investment space, and the last couple of years with this run up in value, property taxes increased by 41% on several of my developments. And look, you're a business owner. If your business increased expenses by 41% in 1 year, how are you going to able to offset that? Yeah. You're not. And so when you just look at everything as a whole, there's just so much chaos and so much noise going on, and you're just trying to figure out how to silence that noise. Yeah. So that you can say, all right, everyone says, just put the head down. I was on a meeting today, a call today, at our brokerage, and some of the leadership team was like, stop talking about this. No, I think that's the wrong move.
Why hide from it?
Exactly. Why would we stop talking about this? There's a lot of misinformation, and we need to speak from coming from knowing better facts about what's actually going on. But we do need to get the message out. And I will say that we do need to defend this industry. This is how you earn a living. Yeah. My belief, and my belief is that you should defend it then.
You should defend it. And I think that you just put it the perfect way. And I think that speaks to a lot of what is the source of a lot of people's anxiety right now. This is what you do to earn a living. But it shouldn't be anything more than that. And I think that's what I've learned the hard way, admittedly, over the last 12 to 18 months or so. I think since COVID, there are probably very few people that have been as affected by market ups and downs than the people sitting at this table right now. As is not to be braggadocious. Certainly, if you knew our stories, it would not be braggadocious. But I would say that we could probably all agree that the highs and lows of the last 4 years have very, very much pound for pound probably not hit people the way they have in this room. And the thing that I learned personally, especially over the last 12 months, is that I dealt with a lot of the things that I've dealt with that a lot of people are probably dealing with right now for the wrong reasons. It was because I had attached so much of who I was to my business. Real estate wasn't what I did to earn a living for a long time. It was a fundamental part of who I was as a human being.
Right.
And when that starts to change, then it's not about the money, and it's not about the fear of not being able to pay your bills. You disguise it that way in your head, but that's not really the case. The reality is, if you can make money selling real estate, you can make money doing just about everything, because it's pretty fucking hard to work in this industry. Yeah. Like, promise you, if you're dealing with the anxiety about paying your bills, you're a bad motherfucker just doing what you do right now. Trust me, you will be fine. I promise you. But I had so much of who I was attached to what I did. It wasn't just what I did for a living. It was the definition of who I was. When I introduced myself, it was who I was. When I thought about what I meant to other people, it was who I was. I didn't have an identity outside of my business. And I was force-fed that dose of humility every day for 12 straight months. And it was the best thing really that ever happened to me, for my soul, really. And it's one of the reasons that I can sit here now and not be so afraid about these things, because I've had to work through that anxiety, and I've had to work through that and through a lot of expensive counseling and things like that. You tend to learn these lessons. But I would put that out there to not dive too much deeper on my story, that if this is something that really is giving you anxiety and fear and things like that, understand one, you are already good enough to make it in the future. If you're making it in the present, you're good enough to make it in the future. It might look a little different, but if you buckle down and this is what you really want to do, there's going to be opportunity there. But be afraid for the right reasons. Be unsure maybe about what the future looks like, but there's no reason to be afraid. If you have anxiety around where the real estate industry is headed, it's because too much of your identity as a human being is attached to it. There's so many other aspects of life that are so much more meaningful to your human experience. If you look up the happiest, most longest living people on earth and stuff like that, people that live in blue zones and things like that, not a single one of those factors has anything to do with wealth or the amount of money you make. It just doesn't make you happier. It doesn't give you better relationships. It doesn't help you sleep better at night. I had more anxiety when I was making a lot more money than I do now, and it has nothing to do with that. I would just encourage you to not go into the future with this type of fear just for fear's sake. If you're afraid every day of what the future looks like, it might be because you have too much of your identity attached to what you do and not enough of it attached to who you are. And I feel so much better waking up every day focusing on who I am as a person rather than what I do for a living. Real estate is just a way that I make money now. But I'll tell you right now, this whole industry goes away tomorrow. I spent 13 years doing a pretty hard fucking job. I'm pretty sure I'll go find a way to make money.
Solar.
And used cars.
Yeah.
You want to see? Go to Matt's TikTok and see about his solar video. It is 600,000 views. I think.
I'm still learning the TikToks.
I'm gonna start solar weed farms.
Oh,
And
nice.
also mine Bitcoin.
Yes. This is a good show.
It's a great show.
And even though it was a cheesy title, and Sleepless in Real Estate, it does cause a lot of sleepless nights. I will tell you,
It does.
Yes.
And I encourage anybody to understand, like, this has been a constant in my life from every breakup I've ever had, every fear I've ever had. It's worse in the morning and it's worse at night. And the only way to make that fear go away is to get into activity during the day. The way you're going to get sleep at night is to know that you kicked ass that day. It will start compounding on itself over time, but know that everybody feels that. Think about when you had your heart broken. How hard was it to go to sleep, and how much did the morning suck? And then eventually they don't anymore. But you know what you did in the middle? You did some shit. You got over it. You moved on with your day. That's what needs to happen for real estate agents right now. And agents who are used to talking to people are going to thrive in this. Agents who have kind of been hiding behind ads and things like that, you might need to get more comfortable talking to people, because it's going to be important
in a while. How AI is going to ruin us.
Yeah. Oh,
That went out the window real quick.
Apparently, you guys have not been in my TikTok comment section, because you can do everything we do with just a lawyer and AI. We're done.
The lawyer.
Yeah, we're done.
What about
AI
I thought lawyers are going to be out of business too.
Yeah.
People are so uninformed on TikTok that they think like that the contracts still need to be written. They're like, AI will write the contracts. I'm like, the contracts aren't we have those already.
Yeah.
Like, I'll send them to you.
Yeah,
Right? Like, it's fine. Like, that's not your issue.
Yeah. All right, good show. Go support our sponsors, because if you guys are having anxiety, think about the sponsors that are,
Think about poor Dana.
Yeah, they're supporting.
She has to deal with us.
Yeah, poor Dana. I mean, she's not even dealing with us. She's dealing with tenants, right? She's dealing with renters, and it's hard to make a renter happy.
Draw a line in what you will do today, because there was a conversation, and like, don't be afraid to draw a line. There was a slight conversation today that seemed like it was interrupted. It's like, hey, somebody should take calls on the weekend. I'm sitting over there thinking in the corner, be like, I don't know how I'm the first one to raise my hand to say I'm not answering the fucking phone on this weekend. Don't be afraid to say no to certain things.
Well, I think it's more, So go support Homeward.
I love you, John.
I'm changing. Yep, you got it up there, Jesse. This is why you should go to Tor Studios, because Jesse's on it. HomewardDFW.com, the best property management company in Dallas-Fort Worth. And then get with Mortgage Mike, Pop Shot champion of West Texas.
Of the universe.
West
of
Texas.
The universe.
Yep. And I'm not even going to call him champ, because that's what he's making us call him now.
All right, champ.
Which is very, very weird.
It's very unbecoming.
Yes. I mean, he's not a humble winner.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah. He's only a humble winner when he comes to slinging loans. And so go to mmgloans.com and get with Mortgage Mike. And then Theron Smith, Armadillo Home Warranty. He's got that hard shell protection for your house. The best home warranty company with that one-page contract. Armadillo.1/Tor, Tore. And then Jesse Showalter at Tor Studios. You're busy, Jesse.
I am busy.
I mean, we got these new cord thingies.
I noticed the cords today. Last week, there was a clippy to extend the cord.
Oh, is there?
Like, yeah, you can extend your cords now and stuff. Dude, this is a legit setup now, guys. This is legit.
Even more than it was 2 weeks ago.
I know.
Good job, Jesse. We're proud of you.
Appreciate it.
Katie should take you out. we give Katie permission.
Yes.
Nah.
No? All right. Well, don't do it, Katie. But what you can do, we do give you permission, go leave us a 5-star review on podcast. That's the Apple version. And then go to Spotify. You have to at least listen to one episode on Spotify to leave a just a 5-star review.
I know this is a bit off topic, but I do like how Apple just decided that they own the word podcast.
Yes.
Like their app
that happen?
Well, it's not Apple Podcast.
Oh, it's just
anymore.
podcast.
It's just podcast,
Yeah.
right? Like they just own that word now.
Yeah.
Apparently.
Yep.
Nobody's fighting them on it.
No. In our Facebook group, the only real estate group worth being a part of, you can come just share your thoughts about everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
Just
All right.
random thoughts.
Yeah.
Go follow me on China's favorite app, Matt Kelderman on TikTok.
That's a good one.
Bye.
Yep. All right. Good.
Thanks for watching the show today. Make sure if you're watching this on Facebook, you head over to our group, the only real estate group we're being a part of, so you can watch the extended conversation. If you're watching this on YouTube, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. And if you listen on the Apple Podcast, leave us a review. We'd really like it. So just do it. Do it. Do that over there. Go to this one. And then go to that one.